Well, here's an obvious statement. The Angels need some pitching in 2024, and 3 of those potential pitchers that the Angels may have wanted to pick up are now off the market. So who are they, and who should the Halos consider, and what can we learn from those signings? Lots to talk about on this Thanksgiving edition. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Angel content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, shout out to our Locked On everydayers tuning in and turning on Locked On Angels on Thanksgiving Day, because that's how we know you're the most loyal. You got us playing in the background while you're cooking or getting the casseroles ready to go. I'm sure everybody appreciates.
Or when you got the family around the table, you just put it on the big screen. Hey, everybody. Is that gravy you got there?
Yeah. A little pumpkin pie action. Let's go. Hey, we are grateful that you are here, and thank you for, first of all, letting us be the 2 people who get to talk about the Angels for the Locked On Podcast Network. It's a pleasure and a privilege, so we want to say thank you to you for that. Hey, on today's show, Mike, we're talking about 3 pitchers who are no longer on the market, and if there should have been a chance that they would have signed with the Angels, should the Angels have gone after them? What do we do now? There's a lot of questions to be asked here and a lot of answers to get into, so let's get started.
John, let's talk about a former Angel that we experienced just a quick blip on the radar last season, and that's Reynaldo Lopez. He signed this last week with the Braves for 3 years, $30 million, and the contract really breaks down. It's more money in year 2 and in year 3 than it is in year 1. The interesting thing about this, Johnny, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that the story out of The Athletic is that Lopez is going to start preparing as a starter this winter, and that the Braves are going to stretch him out in spring training with the hope that he could be somebody that's in the starting rotation at the beginning of 2024. Now, he did average 32. He did have 32 games starts in his career with the White Sox in 2018 and 2019. So he's got some versatility. He hasn't done it in a while. And Locked On Hall of Famer Brent McGuire said, "I'm not convinced that this will succeed, but I'm nonetheless intrigued to see what happens." And we've learned that what Brent has to say, well, it's gold, baby. So I'm wondering your thoughts on this, John, and what an interesting dynamic, because the Angels have some history with this. We'll get into that in just a moment, but your initial thoughts on Lopez signing with the Braves, but not being in the bullpen, but potentially being a starter.
Yeah. When the Braves see something in you that says, hey, I think this guy could be a starter, I would listen to the Braves, Mike. I would listen to the minds and the coaches and the staff who determined that decision and said, yeah, I think Reynaldo Lopez could start. He's definitely got the stuff. He's got a good pitch mix.
Yeah.
He also is really good out of the bullpen too. And he was really good for us as well. I am interested to know why this is the route that they're going. I mean, bullpen arms are not easy to come by because they are so volatile, and Lopez has proven to be a consistent bullpen arm over the years. But this is an interesting route to go, considering the starting pitching free agent market that's out there right now. But to stretch Reynaldo Lopez out and try to get him into the Braves rotation, I trust the Braves. And and it's funny because if you would have asked me if this is something the Angels should have done, I would hesitate. But then I got to thinking about, hey, they did it with Michael Lorenzen, and Lorenzen went on to the Tigers, became an all-star, and was okay with the Phillies, but he was good enough for the Phillies to want to trade for him.
Right.
And so for me, I'm like, yeah, I guess it can be done. And the Angels certainly were able to do it. I am disappointed though, because he's somebody you wanted as a bullpen piece. He's somebody I wanted as a bullpen piece. You signed him in your GM episode. He was off the table for me, but I can't say that I saw this coming, and I can't say that I expected this to happen. But if the Braves are okay with doing it, again, I trust the Braves. They're recent World Series champions. The Braves really can't go wrong when they have designs on making somebody from a reliever to a starter.
Yeah, Kellen Escobar is another name that I was thinking of as somebody that was a reliever and then came and started with the Angels. The Angels weren't the team that decided that he should be a starter, but they were the team that gave him the opportunity to start regularly. So Lorenzen and Escobar are two names that had some success. I think Escobar was a bit better than Lorenzen in his Angel career for sure. Johnny, it's interesting because I don't know if the Angels have the luxury of even thinking about things like this, right? And maybe I should say the Angels don't have the luxury of even thinking about things like this. And the Braves do, because the Braves have been so good and they have such a strong starting rotation. They also have a really good bullpen. It's interesting with the volatility with bullpen pieces and not sure who you're going to get. I wonder if they aren't even thinking about that because they're confident in who they have in their pen. I know that they traded a bunch of guys for Aaron Bummer, the Braves did. And so they're trying to really solidify their team and perhaps make a move for some other players as well. I know that Shohei was rumored to be talking with him, but who's he not rumored to be talking with? The interesting thing about this, though, is taking that guy who was really good in the bullpen and putting him in that starting rotation. I think that this is a good move for Lopez because he's going to be successful no matter where he pitches, because he's got a really strong fastball, a fastball that's really hard to hit. And if he places it well, and if he throws it hard, gosh, I could just see him really being successful in whatever he does, but specifically in the starter realm. Johnny, is there somebody on the Angels that has this potential that maybe we need to take from the bullpen and move into the starting rotation? Let's say we have the luxury to think about that, first of all.
Yeah.
But is there somebody that you can think of?
Well, before I answer your question, I have a name for you. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
Neftali Feliz.
Remember Neftali Feliz? I remember him.
With the Rangers.
Yep.
Guy threw gas out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And they tried to convert him to a starter because they liked the velocity on his fastball, Mike.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the fact that perhaps there's not a lot of starting pitching out there who throws really hard. And if the Braves are emphasizing that, they're like, well, let's take this guy who does throw really hard and turn him into a starter rather than going the route of trying to find somebody who can almost hit 100 miles an hour on his fastball.
Right.
I mean, obviously Shohei can do it. He's not going to pitch to start next season, but there's not a lot of guys that are throwing heat as a starter.
Sure.
So I think that kind of might be the game plan here is let's get a hard throwing starter because that's what we want to emphasize in the future. So that might be what they're thinking about.
Well, and this contract is really great if he does become a strong starter for them, right? As a bullpen piece, it's maybe a bit on the expensive side, but if he becomes a starter, 3 years, $30 million, like you can't beat that. But again, back to the question, is there somebody with the Angels that you think has that potential to move into the rotation out of the bullpen? Or is there somebody that's a starter right now that perhaps needs to be in the bullpen to be a bit more successful?
Is it cheating if I say Sam Bachman? Because
that's the name that came to my mind too. Yeah.
we want to see Sam Bachman start. And I think he has the ability to do that.
Not cheating. Not at all.
But where he learns how to do that, I mean, it feels like that's a move you want to make. You want to put him in the minors, give him some starts, and then see how that converts to the majors.
Yeah.
But as a bullpen piece, he's been pretty good for the Angels when he wasn't hurt.
Right.
And so it really depends on like what's your need now and who are you counting on in your bullpen and in your rotation. Mike, if I had to go the other route, to me, it's Jose Suarez, obviously, because he is a strong bullpen guy. He has trouble getting through the 1 through 9 more than once. And so to get him in there for an inning or two to take on 3 to 6 guys or 3, 6 plus is not a bad thing because that way he's in, he's out, he's done his job, he's gotten through 2 innings. I think that's where we've seen Jose Suarez have success in the past.
Yeah.
And I think he could do that again. So to me, it's Sam Bachman. I would like to see him be a starter, but I also think at the same time, you kind of sacrifice him being in your bullpen at the major league level. However, maybe they come into this spring training and say, hey, we want to make Sam into a starter.
Yeah.
And when there's an opportunity available, he can start for us. I also think about Davis Daniel and what his role is going to look like. I think that with the crowded rotation that they have right now and the Angels having designs on signing more starting pitching, I think you're going to find a lot of these guys who can start will either make spot starts or come out of the bullpen for the Angels in 2024. Hey, we want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on Locked On Angels, when is loyalty a good thing? Well, we're going to talk about Aaron Nola and the Phillies and how that relationship is something the Angels can learn from. We'll talk about that coming right up. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network where it's your team every day. And if you haven't done so already, everydayers, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's all the sports stories you want to hear about on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7, 365, covering the top stories in sports, and you can see your favorite local experts of Locked On from all the teams around the league, all the teams across the sports world are there for you, and they even have their national shows as well. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
All right, Johnny, I have a question for you. You ready for this? Now you almost have to like wipe your memory away from this last season as I ask this question. Who would you prefer before this last season? Lance Lynn or Lucas Giolito?
Oh man. I think Lynn was having the better season before 2023. I think he was like Giolito was great in 2021, but I think Lance Lynn was the better pitcher, more recent.
Yeah.
After that. So coming into 2023, I think Lance Lynn would have been the guy I would have chosen.
What's interesting about Lynn is that he just recently signed with the Cardinals, 1 year, $10 million. Includes a $3 million performance bonus. He said it's a no-brainer for him to sign with the Cardinals. He lives an hour and a half away, so he gets to sleep at home during home games. So he was really excited about that. Again, the humanity of these players, sometimes we forget about, be able to go home, see your wife, see your kids. And I think he has a few kids. And so it's nice to be able to have dad at home. What's interesting about Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito is there was a lot of conversation about both of them at the trade deadline, and the Angels went in the Giolito direction. And I think that was the right move out of the two because Giolito's the younger guy and perhaps could have really been a huge part of the rotation for a winning team. Unfortunately, we all know how that went. And then the other piece that's really fascinating is Lynn goes to the Dodgers, and he was not having a great year. But for maybe his first few starts, seems like Mark Pryor and the Dodgers figured something out with Lance Lynn, and some teams started to figure him out again.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he had a pretty good last half of the season with the Dodgers and was able to make the playoffs. And so this move with the Cardinals, it feels like the Cardinals are the Angels from a few years ago trying to sign players that can fill a roster spot instead of having a
They also got Kyle Gibson too as well.
They did.
That was recent. Yeah.
And it was like a $12 million 1 year deal or something along those lines. So again, it feels like the Cardinals are doing what the Angels used to do. So I bring that up because I want to ask you, are you bummed that the Angels didn't get Lance Lynn, or are you excited that they're not filling roster spots, but maybe perhaps being a bit more strategic and thoughtful about the players that they're going to sign?
Yeah, you know what it comes down to, Mike, is the Cardinals are trying to get away from all of the pitch to contact guys that they had last year. We've talked about it a lot with the Cardinals, and that's that they didn't make any adjustments to the shift and the pitch clock. They kind of rolled into 2023 with the same thing they had going in 2022 and didn't anticipate any changes. Now, there were teams that maybe overly anticipated the changes, but the Cardinals are a great example of what went wrong if you don't make any adjustments to the league and its new rules. And I think that the Cardinals are emphasizing a guy like Lance Lynn because he throws hard. They want that fastball velocity. They want that strikeout capability. And I'm not too familiar with Gibson. I need to get into his stats. But with Lance Lynn, that's a severe departure from where this pitching staff was last season. And going to your point about filling roster spots, the Angels don't have any roster spots to fill. Yes, because they are going to try and sign somebody as a starting pitcher. I think, Mike, that you're going to see them add a starting pitcher, and then you're going to see a combination of, Griffin Canning, Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, and Chase Silseth fill out the rest of that 5-man rotation. Tyler Anderson might be kind of a back and forth swingman kind of guy if he can't figure out what made him great with the Dodgers. But what I'm saying is the Angels are going to make the move that they need to make, which is a frontline starter. And I don't know if that comes via free agency right now, because we know that Aaron Nola is off the board. I know Blake Snell is still out there, but I did see a tweet that said the only 2 years that Blake Snell got to over 130 innings were his 2 Cy Young years. And so, yes, that's great that when he does perform, he is in Cy Young contention or even wins it, but 130 innings is not a lot for a starter. And so I wonder if the Angels have to go the route of trading for a Dylan Cease or Tyler Glasnow. Ken Rosenthal on Foul Territory said that he thinks Glasnow is the first one to be traded because he's got a $25 million salary this coming season, and the Rays are going to want to shed that. The other two is Corbin Burns and Shane Bieber. I know Burns will likely stick with the Brewers. I know that there was talk about kind of changing some things there, but now that Brandon Woodruff is no longer on that team, I think that does change how the Brewers approach the offseason. So, Mike, I'm not convinced that the Angels are going to go the free agency route at this point. I think they're going to try to go out and make some sort of trade for a one starter, a frontline starter. What do you think?
I saw an interesting stat last week. The Angels in their trades from the last couple of years have netted a negative 9.5 WAR. So they were in the negative in their trades. And so the guys they gave away versus the guys they got, it netted them a negative 9.5 WAR.
You lost 9.5 games because of the trades you made. Yeah,
so
that's what it is.
If they're going to make trades, they got to be better. And that's on Perry specifically. He's got to be better at identifying who it is that he's bringing in. So when you bring up a trade, here's my thought. I wonder if, because of the history of not having great trades, if the Angels would even be in the conversation for somebody like an Alek Manoah, because he was somebody that was really struggling with the Blue Jays, and you're not sure who you're getting, right? But I could see them being in the conversation for a Glasnow, because Tyler Glasnow has produced. He's been good. Yeah. Now, that $25 million salary could be a sticking point, right, for the Halos, because they have a lot of really strong contracts, and depending on what they do with Shohei. I'm going to say this. I don't believe it, but I'm going to say it out loud, and then you can just poo-poo it if you think it's stupid, because it probably is stupid. Could they get Glasnow? Maybe throw in a top-rated minor league guy, but also Anthony Rendon? What do you think?
No, they're not going to add that salary to their.
Are you poo-pooing it?
Paper. I'm poo-pooing it immediately because you've got Glasnow's 25 versus Rendon's 38. They like. Their whole objective is to shed salary. Now, I will say we might see one of our starting rotation pieces in a trade for Glasnow, because, like I said, there's not a lot of room, Mike, with the guys that they want to roll with. So I could see a Griffin Canning, maybe even a Reed Detmers. As much as I would be disappointed to lose somebody like Detmers, I think that that's a route that the Rays would want to go. But you have to zoom out and consider, what do the Angels want to do? Do they want 1 year of Tyler Glasnow to go all in again this year? I don't think that it's a good idea to go all in. And once we start to see some of the moves that they're making, I think that we're going to get a better picture of what they are wanting to do with this upcoming season. But if you give up your future in somebody like Detmers for 1 year of Glasnow, that's a big indication to me that, they're going to try to go for it. So when I think about frontline starters, I think they're going to have to figure out a way that it doesn't cost them somebody that they can count on in the future. Maybe the Rays always have designs on finding somebody that is flying under the radar in somebody else's system. And so maybe there's somebody in the system now that the Rays they've got their eye on, and the Angels don't know what they're sitting on with a particular pitcher.
Right. I saw this number I think it was yesterday or the day before. The Angels starting rotation right now, as is going to cost about $22 million in the next season.
Mm-hmm.
John, is there a world where they just run with that starting rotation, where it is Anderson, Silseth, Canning, Sandoval, Detmers, and then you have Bachman learning how to pitch as a starter? You have Davis Daniel. Like, we talk about like not getting somebody to try to go all in, quote unquote. Like, is it bad? I don't know if it's bad. Is it bad?
That's my world.
To just run with those guys?
In what world does that take place? It takes place in John Frisch's world, because I don't have any expectations for next season.
Yeah.
And I think that you need a season to see what happens with this new coaching staff. You need a season to see what happens if these guys are in a 5-man rotation. There's so many questions that need to be answered.
Yeah.
And if you don't throw a bunch of money and say, we're going to take it all, you have the opportunity to see these guys grow. You have the opportunity to see these guys develop and see what comes out of it. Then you get your answer. You get your questions answered, I should say, in terms of this starting rotation, and even guys who've been on the fringe for a while in terms of position players. And so you answer those questions in 2024, and then maybe you have something for 2025. You make adjustments, you figure out what you want to do. But yeah, I think I'm with you. There's a world where this is who the Angels have. And yeah, a lot of people are going to hate that that's what they're rolling with. But to me, as a fan, I'm like, figure out what you have and see what you can roll with and see what is going to make an impact in your future.
Johnny, somebody you've talked about is Aaron Nola. He's somebody
wanted to sign him.
You've been excited about, and I think he's a great player. He's 31 years old, and he just recently signed a 7-year deal with the Phillies at $172 million. Mm-hmm. That's an AAV around $24 million. So he did take the Jared Weaver hometown discount, right? Yeah. Like, he did get offered some other deals from other places, but he turned them down. That was the rumor, at least. And the belief really is amongst baseball people that the Phillies are going to win the World Series within the next 3 years, or at least be competitive for the World Series and try to win in the next 3 years. And so that's why Nola wanted to stay. He's going to end up being, I think, the second longest tendered Philly of all time at the end of this contract, if he ends up staying for the whole thing, which is great. And it brings up an interesting conversation about loyalty, because there's always conversations that talk about loyalty from the organization to the player. And then there's conversations about the player to the organization, right?
Yes.
I love this move because it feels like both the organization and the player were on the same team. They're playing the same game. They really like each other. Seems like Dave Dombrowski, he does this everywhere he goes, but it seems like he understands how to affirm players, support players, but also get the best out of those players. And that there isn't a lot of dead money that he throws around. It's money that is invested in helping the team to be better. So what can the Angels learn from the Phillies that maybe they haven't done really well in the past when they hand out these big giant contracts like the one Aaron Nola got?
They have to be on the verge of winning. The Phillies they were in the World Series 2 years ago. They were, they didn't make it this year, but they were in the championship series against the Diamondbacks. And so that they've been on the verge of winning. And for Aaron Nola to be loyal, there's incentive there to go, oh, I want to be a part of this team who I helped get to the World Series and the championship series. Like, yeah, we have just as good of a shot as anybody else, if not better, if we get back to the World Series, and I want to be a part of that. So I think it was an easy decision for Aaron Nola to be loyal, not just in terms of like he's already been in Philly his whole career, but to take what I think would be about $4 million less than what he could have gotten at 28. He took 24. I mean, Mike, the belief that the Phillies are going to win the series in the next 3 years. Yeah, I'd buy that. I'd FanDuel that right now. Like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so to me, the loyalty returns to the team when you return that loyalty to the player and you show them that you're serious about contending, you show them that you're serious about winning, and then you go out there and prove it. Like the Angels can talk all they want about like, yeah, we want to contend, we want to win, we want to do this, we want to do that. But until they get there, it's meaningless. And so I think that this is a lesson in how the Angels could have and maybe should have handled the Shohei Ohtani situation. If you had gotten Ohtani to the playoffs in the last 3 years of his incredible run, 21, 22, and 23, I think we're having a whole different conversation about Shohei Ohtani returning to the Angels, because I think Ohtani would then see, hey, these guys are serious. And yeah, we were just a game short here, or we didn't win this series there. But if things had gone different, then we'd totally be in the World Series. And I think that's the lesson to be learned here, is that Nola sees the track record of the Phillies and where they've been the last 2 or 3 years and how they've gotten there. He's been part of that. And now, of course, you roll the dice on the Phillies. Like, they give you the best chance to get to the World Series in this 7-year contract. And whether that's at the beginning or the middle or the end, Aaron Nola's there and he's part of it, and he's been part of it. And he helped get them there. And I think, again, to the Angels' point, they could have and should have done way more, even though they don't. I know all the injuries and all that stuff. I know this and that and the other. There's a lot more that these Halos could have done while Shohei Ohtani was setting the world on fire with his outstanding play to get them to the playoffs, at least the playoffs. And Mike, we say it all the time. They crammed and studied the night before the exam by trying to go out and get all the pieces they needed before the trade deadline, which I commend them. That's what they should have done. But you also should have done that in the offseason and in 2022's deadline. And in 2021's deadline, like, you waited until the last minute to go, all right, Shohei, we're going for it. So, and I know that he appreciated that, and Shohei wanted to win with the Angels, but you can't do that. You need to have consistency and prove that you care and that you want to get this guy to the playoffs. That's what Aaron Nola has gotten with the Phillies.
The Phillies are interesting because the signings, it's not like they're not spending money, but the signings are thoughtful. They're strategic.
Yeah.
And specifically with Nola, of course you want him to stay. And of course he wants to stay because you've been winning. But that's been the big gap between the Phillies and the Angels. The Angels will try to make a big splash in the free agent market. That's why they're signing Anthony Rendon, or that's why they're signing this person or that person. But they're not doing it because they think it's going to be the best move. Now, we have argued that in entering the 2020 season, the Angels did need a third baseman.
Sure.
But that's not all they needed, right? They needed a whole lot more than just that.
They needed Zach Wheeler, and Artie made Billy come home and talk to Rendon instead of Zach Wheeler.
Right. When you have young Joe Adell, and no disrespect to Joe Adell, I love how he's developing, but when you have young Joe Adell, who was 20, 21 at the time, playing in the outfield and balls are bouncing off the top of his head, like, you can tell, like, you haven't really been thoughtful about putting this roster together, because you have Anthony Rendon and Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and then you have, who's that guy again? Out in right field, right? And it doesn't happen that way with the Phillies. And even in the trades, I'm going to talk about Brandon Marsh. I think that was a great trade for them, although I really love that we got Logan O'Hoppe. Yeah. It was a great trade because it was a piece that they needed, affordable piece that they needed for their team to fit in with the guys that they've given big contracts to. And what it's done is it's turned this Phillies team into a team that's intimidating, a team that's going to be there in the end, a team that will compete for a championship. And now they're going to continue to do that. They're even looking at trading some of their big pieces so that they can open up roster spots to bring in younger guys that can help them get over the hump, because they haven't gotten over the hump the last 2 years. And so I love that Dombrowski is thinking about those things. It seems like Perry has started to move down that road a bit. Sure. However, it does feel like they're cramming for a test again, because, John, this is his last year with the Angels, unless he signs a longer deal. This is his last year. So, again, it feels like we're back in that same spot we've been in the last few years. Like, oh, I hope it works. I hope it works. I hope it works. I hope it works. And the no expectation line that you keep throwing out there is almost like, well, I don't want to have expectations because I don't want to get my heart broken again. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right in the sense that they are on a trajectory that is a very good path with what they're doing this season in terms of the coaching staff and having Ron Washington there and building some culture and trying to get the best out of this youth movement that they have going on. But again, the big question is, where's Perry Manasian after this year? And what about the fact that they only have a GM and no assistant GM? What about the gutting of the minor league pitching system that they've done? We know that Dylan Axelrod and Buddy Carlisle, Connor Hinchlife isn't there anymore. So are they going to replace that, or is that not a priority anymore, Mike? It's just they have two directions that they can go, and they can keep moving in this direction that helps the major league club, but it can't come at the expense of the minor league system, like it's been for all this time. I think that they are headed in the right direction. We'll be talking about this team in the next 5-6 years being a team that we can get behind and have some confidence that they can get to the playoffs, to the World Series. But I don't think that we can have those expectations now. And I think it would be remiss if they think that going all in this coming season is a good idea.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Everydayers, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and they are there for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On and our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, comment below the video, get in on the conversation. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
It is Fan Mail Friday, so come and join us for those Thanksgiving leftovers and also for all of your questions and thoughts about what's happening with the Angels right now. And you can reach out to us on social media. You can give us a call on our voicemail. We would love to hear from you. Fan Mail Friday tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, friends, have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.